One more. Okay. So if I walk around, I should take this one.
Yeah.
Testing.
Use the screen. Again, it won't go in the room.
I have to stay. Oh, well, good thing I have to. I wouldn't.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to all our association members. My name is Lila Sear, and I am the president of Community Living Algoma Board of Directors, also the chair of this evening meeting. On behalf of the Board of Directors, we express our appreciation for each one of you to take your time out to come out here this evening. This evening, you will hear about successes and challenges with Community Living Algoma. But I'd like to introduce the board that are here. I don't want to miss anybody, so I'm going to read it. with myself, Lila Sear. I have Mary Lynn Ricky. She's the treasurer. Anka Lansky Johnson, secretary. Linda Lewis, director. Rhonda McCraig, director, South Africa. She's there. Linda Hedrick, she's here. And with regrets, we have Lucille Norman, Emily Kelly, and Jonathan Boo, vice chair. In accordance with our bylaws, 5.09. Oh, Margaret is not on the list. Sorry, Margaret. Barbo, sorry. Okay, that's why we have a list, so we don't forget. In accordance with our bylaws, 5.09, a quorum must be present to vote for a vote to occur. In accordance with CLA bylaw, a quorum exists if there are no less than 8 members present in person or represented by proxy. We do have 11 members present this evening to conduct our voting for bylaw changes. As a result, a quorum does exist. As this meeting for membership is considered a formal meeting, there will be minutes taken of this meeting. A vote will be held and recorded at the end of the meeting. We will require a motion to adjourn. So I need a motion. I should have asked that first. A mover and a seconder to call the meeting to order. So I need a mover. Jason and Margaret. Everybody's in favor? Okay. We will read our mission statement together. Community of Living Algoma supports people with intelligent disability. We are committed to the advancement of a community in which all people are recognized as full citizens, achieve personal dignity, enjoy the benefits and responsibility of independence, and are supported to reach their full potential. Now we'll ask John to come up and talk about successes and challenges. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Paul Ticcio, Executive Director with Community Living Algoma. This is going to be very painful for me tonight. I'm going to explain why. For the first time, we are trying to use technology, so I believe there's 3 people who are connected that are live streaming. So I can't walk around. I have to stay behind the microphone. I think they did this on purpose. Sorry, Lucas is flashing 5. There's 5 people live streaming. And we did set up a location as well in Elliott Lake. So I want to say hello to those who are live streaming as well. And if those that are live streaming can use the chat section to just identify who they are. And if there's any questions, then Lucas, who's here in the Sioux, will flag me and we'll take those questions from people who are live streaming. These are the challenges with technology. But also I think very exciting, because when you have a geographic area such as ours, the Algoma District, how do we get people to join in? So it's very exciting for the first time to live stream and have 5 people connected with us. So I'm not going to go through in detail the successes and challenges, because I believe they are in your handout material. What we will do is we're going to start right into the strategic plan process. And after we get through the strategic plan, there's a resolution before the membership to accept the strategic plan that's going to be presented. And then we will show, I believe it's 7 or 8 short video clips, because I believe it's better that the stories are told than it is for me to talk to you about what these successes are and what we've experienced as an organization moving forward. So to get us started, the strategic planning process, I want to recognize the subcommittee that worked with us to do this work. There was Linda Hedrick, Mary Lynn Riberty, and Emily Kelly. Did I get it right, Leslie? Those were the 3 subcommittee members. And I believe we must have had 3 meetings. And I recall being in the boardroom and there were papers everywhere. And we had to decipher all that information into what's going to be presented to you this evening, which is very exciting. It has gone through a review by the board of directors, and the board has agreed to at least bring it forward to share with the membership. And this evening, again, one of the things that happens through the membership meeting is that the strategic plan is approved. And if approved, then tomorrow we start our whole campaign of launching it throughout the organization and the community. I believe we're going to be on TV on April 3rd. And Emily Kelly has agreed to come on the internet television news station, and I'm going to make sure Emily does all the talking. She doesn't know that yet. She's unable to be here this evening. So to get us started, one of the things about strategic planning is just recognizing that the organization needs to have a strategic plan, a sense of direction. Our vision is very clear. The statement says, all people belong, join the journey. And I view the strategic plan as taking us through the journey of our organization, achieving its mission and achieving its vision. And so it is an exciting evening in terms of where we started and where we are. To reflect on our previous strategic plan and how we came to the decision that we did, or that the board came to a decision, was that we were looking at our strategic plan and we kind of realized that time had lapsed and certain things had been worked on. And after 5 years, we also recognized that certain items were no longer relevant. I recall one item was an income diversification fund, which meant that we were going to get really, really good at fundraising. And we've done so many things in fundraising, and we've recognized we can't put a lot of energy into trying to raise funds because it's going to take away. We had found that we were spending more money to raise the funds than we were bringing money in. So we're still fortunate to have some of those, some community partners like the Sault Ste. Marie Airport Development Corporation on an annual basis with their golf tournament and donations and things like that that roll in. But we didn't feel it was relevant any longer. So as we looked at the 5-year plan, we also then looked at, there's been a new government that's been elected, and we don't have any indications as to where they're going. So we didn't want to spend a lot of energy and time and resources to get out there and engage everybody in a dialogue about a plan. What we felt was really important was to take a look at where are we today and what do we see realistically being focused on over the next 2 years. And then within the 2-year time frame, we come out back and engage our stakeholders, employees, families, people we support, and the broader community in the development of a future 5-year strategic plan. So the board did make a decision to enter into a 2-year strategic plan, and I'll walk you through the elements of that plan very shortly. I'm just going to check in with Lucas to make sure people have identified. They haven't identified. And so there's no questions yet from screening. And are there any questions from the floor as well? I don't want to forget the people that are in front of us here this evening in terms of any questions to this point. None? Okay, so moving forward, one of the things that was recognized as we were working on drafting the components of the plan was that we really wanted to identify 4 key priorities. And at first we started calling them pillars, but really it's 4 priorities that we looked at. And these priorities, I'll walk you through them because there's a lot of elements that make them up, but in the end, it's what formulates the strategic plan. So just to prepare you, you're going to see it as pieces of a puzzle coming together, and at the end, you're going to see the overall. But I'm going to walk you through the various components. So the first one, yes. Yeah. And you're going to have a lot more detail that I'm going to walk you through in the presentation. I'm going to give you an overview of each one of those areas. So I'm going to step out because I have to grab my other handout that has the details. I can't leave the microphone. Thank you. So the first item of the strategic plan, as you see, the first piece of the puzzle is quality of life. And this basically, for us, was very simple to identify because it has been the focus of our work for a very, very long time. So as we read through the mission statement and our vision, you quickly can identify that one of the major areas of focus for the organization is person by person. We want to support people so that they achieve the highest possible quality of life. And our mission statement takes us through people achieving independence, their rights and responsibilities, citizens, and belonging in their community. And so that becomes a key area of our work. Identified under quality of life are several subcategories. So, and one of the things when I identify these subcategories is periodically we will be reporting to the board, but also I think an important part of work that we need to do is give the same information to our members so that they can see that we are staying true to the strategic plan and working on the areas that we refer to this evening. So one of the items under quality of life is about our person-centeredness and how do we improve the work we do to become more person-centered. So even though we've been doing some exceptional work, there's lots of room for improvement because not everybody we support, I believe, can say that we've taken a person-centered approach with them. If we have a lot of situations where people have identified hopes, dreams, and goals, and they are not yet fulfilled. So it's really important that we become stronger over the next 2 years on the whole concept of being person-centered, and that people can set goals and dreams and aspirations, and then we have to look at those and align our supports to match up with how people want to be supported. Another item under quality of life is abuse prevention. We did a lot of work on abuse and collecting abuse data and stakeholder engagement a couple of years ago, and we generated a report. And we've been doing well on raising awareness about abuse, but it still is a situation that does occur. So people are still experiencing some form of abuse, be it at the hands of the support worker or be it in the community. So we see having to do a lot more work to ensure that at some point we really raise the awareness and educate people. Because at the end of the day, the success on abuse is going to come from a heightened awareness about people with intellectual disabilities within their community. The greatest measure of success is going to come from a community that responds and reacts when they see things being done that are inappropriate or unacceptable. And so we know as an organization that over the next few years, it has to remain a high area of focus for us. And quality of life is also rights and citizenship. And this connects back to our mission statement. And again, lots of work to do in the area of ensuring that we're upholding rights. We've done some amazing work over the years. The organization has a rights review commission. So no longer can we just impose rights restrictions on people without them going through a formal process. And on this committee are volunteers that are supported by staff. And every rights restriction that is imposed has to be reviewed, as well as everybody who's on psychotropic medications. On an annual basis, those medications have to be reviewed. I'm proud to report that what we have seen is the volume of rights restrictions since we introduced the process comes down year after year after year. And we've also seen a significant reduction in medications that people have been on for years and years and years that may have had a lot of side effects, but were never being revisited and reevaluated by a medical practitioner. So we're very proud to report we've done some amazing things. And this rights and citizenship is going to be an ongoing, I think, item for us to stay focused on, but we see some additional work having to be done in that area. Another quality of life component is inclusion. And some of the discussion we were having was that we almost were tempted to have inclusion be another just separate area of priority. But we saw it best embedded because it is a quality of life issue. We know the more people are included, the more successful their quality of life. We also know that inclusion starts at a very young age in schools, in the education system. And we have made some small inroads in education, but I think we're at a crossroads when it comes to inclusion in schools because it's either we stay on the track we're on or at some point we have to elevate the issue of inclusion within an advocacy effort, a lobbying effort, an advocacy effort. I want to raise with you one of the areas that we have of concern. Still within our district, we have one school that is totally segregated. It's Rockhaven School in East Algoma. I believe it's one of about a dozen schools that are still segregated in the province of Ontario. It is pretty hard to be proud of where we are at with inclusion, knowing that we have a school that is totally segregated for about 23, 24 students in our own backyard. So we have some work to do, and it's difficult work, because when we enter the arena of advocacy and lobbying, we do upset and ruffle feathers of a lot of community stakeholders and partners. But if we stay true to our mission, we have some challenges ahead of us and have to meet these challenges in a very respectful and professional manner. So I believe the best efforts are going to come from with the work we do on the ground with families and letting families lead the inclusion campaign within the school settings. But the organization has work to do to remain true to the concept of inclusion for all people, all ages. Another item under quality of life, many of you are probably familiar or have heard the term personal outcome measures. We stay true and committed to measuring if quality of life for people is improving. So on a regular basis, the organization does set out to conduct interviews. People are approached if they want to participate. I think we've done thousands of them over the years. So we have a lot of data, and we've started to realize that the organization has kind of maxed out its ability to move forward. So we're starting to see some real struggles in enriching quality of life beyond the point that we've attained at this point. And some of the other pillars will help you understand what some of those struggles are. But it's something we stay true to. It's something we will continue. I believe we host 1 or 2 self-assessments throughout the year, and that really sets the benchmark for us. We also, connected to quality of life, is that the board has tentatively set the year 2020 as the year that we will be pursuing accreditation. So we will have a third party evaluating and assessing whether the organization is effective in its quality of life, in delivery of quality of life, and enriching quality of life of the people we support. I say tentative because there's so many hardships and challenges that if we start to see evidence and signs, we're not just going to force ourselves into accreditation, but we really want to see that we've turned the corner on some of the other pillars or some of the other priorities that we have identified. So before I move to the next piece of the puzzle, the next piece of the plan, are there any questions on the quality of life piece? No questions? Lucas, anything live streaming? Have there been any identification? Okay, we'll leave it. People are learning. We'll move to the next piece of the puzzle. Oh, sorry. Yes. So there's 21 elements that when we do our self-assessments, and we're also being evaluated from the third party, there's 21 elements, and those 21 elements are broken down into 2 columns. So I wish I had some examples. Jen, can you refer to some examples of the outcome measures? People choose where they live, people choose who they live with, they're free from abuse. So there's 21 areas that get measured. And we self-assess so that we're believers that what gets measured gets done, because you start to generate data. But we're also at a point that you could be pursuing accreditation by a third party. And that's where you really get the validation that you're doing what you say you are doing. So it's in reference to those 21, what's referred to as outcomes and individualized supports. There's 2 areas that are looked at for each one of those 21 outcomes. Yes. What's beautiful about the process and why we've stayed committed to the Council on Quality and Leadership process, because it is information, the questions are asked of the individual and their supports. It's not the organization's measure. It's not an administrative measure, which a lot of accreditation processes do. This is truly from a person's perspective and their support's perspective. Very good questions, thank you. I'm not. So there's an overall, the process has changed over the years, and I can't say I'm fully briefed on it. Jen, would you be able to speak to that?
There's a criteria to be found, and there's about
yeah. It's a pretty intense process, and I've never been a believer that you just go for accreditation because you want the certificate. Our ideal goal is that everybody we support is experiencing the best possible quality of life. And but this process is very intense. It's changed over the years. I remember when it started back, when we connected with the process back in the 90s, mid-90s, that like you had to have an average of 14 out of 21 outcomes, 14 out of 21 individualized supports present. That's been kind of reduced. Like, so they no longer just look at the 14, as Jennifer's saying. There's a whole bunch of things that they're looking at now. And my understanding is under the current process, there's a big self-assessment component, because these accreditors, there's no way that they can cover an entire organization. So when they see that we're doing self-assessments, and I refer to the rights committee, they're seeing that there is a due process to review rights. And so they're looking for the evidence that you're doing what you say you're supposed to be doing to enrich quality of life. That's how you attain it. The highest measure is 4 years with distinction. And we kind of get a feel that we are at the 4-year accreditation level. We're not certain yet that we're at the distinction level, because you really have to be living this each and every day and practicing it each and every day. So it's a really tough measure. And so 2020 might be is the year that is set, but we'll be reporting to the board in terms of our readiness. And if we feel we're not where we want to be, because we want to shoot for 4 years distinction. I think anything less than that for us is shooting for middle of the road as opposed to the highest degree. But the unfortunate thing is that the government doesn't put much emphasis on these measures. We wish they would, because if they made funding contingent on delivering quality services and they measured quality of life, then maybe the whole sector would be moving across the province. But there's only maybe a dozen organizations that use the Council on Quality and Leadership, and there's probably 30 or 40 other organizations that are accredited through other bodies. But we've looked at them all. We chose the hardest one, and the one that's really focused from the person's perspective. So we're really proud of that. But we'll see where we land on 2020. Does that help with the accreditation? I believe the latest numbers were around 1,000, and that's children, youth, and adults. No, there's definitely a wait list. And we don't have numbers on the wait list because we no longer have access to that information. So Developmental Services Ontario, which came into being 2011. Thank you, Heather. I got my audience planted with people who can field questions. That's great. This is my support crew. Thank you. So 2011, the province changed by introducing 5 regional offices, very similar to the LIN model, the Local Health Integration Network model. And families have to go through the DSO, and then Developmental Services Ontario. Then there's a supports intensity scale, an eligibility assessment that's completed, and that name goes on a wait list based on the services they're requiring, and the priority is set and determined by the score of the needs of that individual. And so how does the wait list get addressed today? The organization, when there's a vacancy, the organization has to contact the DSO, and say, can you give us the next name on the list? So they give you the next priority for that service type that you've identified having a vacancy in. It's not the best way, but the government wanted to make sure it was equitable and fair, because before agencies determined who came into services, and there was a lot of politics and squeaky wheel, and there was a lot of things happening. So it's not the best model, but it certainly does present with an element of integrity and an element of equity and fairness. Any other questions? Good? Nothing from internet land? We're good? Okay, so we'll move to the next pillar or area of focus, and it's communication. So under communication, and remember earlier I referenced, you'll see how these priorities interconnect, how they will interconnect to improving quality of life. And so it's important that we're working on all these areas at the same time. So communication, what we identify there is, and this is communication in terms of information sharing, engaging people, which we believe we've made some ground as an organization, but there's still a lot of room. Look, we're very proud that we've hosted some family forums, and we were doing it like with intensity, and it was continuous, and then you get busy with something else and you forget to keep doing it. We have to get back to building those things into our work plans where we're hosting ongoing. We find one of the most difficult things that families experience through our organization change, they just don't know or understand it. But we've also witnessed that when family members have experienced the change and families have walked that change through with them, that many families have said, this is great. But so what we're understanding is that there's a communication gap between what the organization knows and what the community, families, and individuals know. But we've also discovered that there's a communication gap between what we might know, what I might know, and what the direct support professionals know. And we've started to do some work in-house to get better at information sharing. So things like the uncertainty of this government. There have been no decisions. All we have is speculation. But we still should get out there and talk about that because we have a lot of staff who are fearful. We also recognize that there's families out there that are thinking, I wonder what this is going to mean to us, right? And so we want to get better at improving those lines of communication. So one of the items is stakeholder engagement. Again, that would be family forums. We really, before we get out and so as I referenced, our strategic plan right now was basically developed in-house. What we want to do over the next 2 years is make it a practice of engagement. So getting out there and soliciting input, feedback, whether it's town hall discussions, surveys, whatever way we can reach out to stakeholders to get input on what are the things that matter to you. That should be setting our priorities. So what are the things that matter to families? What are the things that matter to people we support? What are the things that matter to our employees? And what are the things that matter to our community? And how do those things become priorities in the work we do from a strategic direction? Okay. Another item is social media. This is that technology piece, and I'm going to cringe because it's working very effectively. So if you've been on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, you will be kept abreast of everything going on that's very successful and very positive with the organization. The unfortunate part is that we think we're done. We put it out in social media and that everybody's on social media and that everybody is following it. Well, a lot of people aren't on social media. It's very classic for me to go into work and Leslie to say, were you on Facebook? Because did you see what we posted? No, Leslie, I wasn't on Facebook. I don't migrate there right away. But, you know, Leslie reminds me and I go, and we've been posting not only some of the successes that we're experiencing as an organization, and it's people's stories, but we're also posting what others are posting on their sites because there's learning to happen from what's happening in other parts of the world and other parts of the province. So an example is we had a gentleman who worked at Canadian Tire and after I believe 25 or 27 years decided to retire. And we asked him if it would be okay for us to take some pictures and post them. We did. He ended up with 10,000 likes, follows. And when we looked at it, it wasn't really people we knew, which was truly amazing. It was the outside world that is connected to what we're doing. So there's a lot of positive in social media, and it is a great way to communicate our message and what we're doing and to share information. But we have to really be conscientious that there's multiple means of communication. We're dealing with generational issues. We're dealing with demographic issues. We're dealing with people who might not have access to the internet. So how do we get information into people's hands? So I believe we had introduced a newsletter that's kind of been put on hold, but we're planning to bring that back into the mix. To support this communication priority, we've also had to come to the understanding that the organization didn't have the capacity to improve its communication. So we've been out trying to recruit a communication intern. We had one, the person's no longer with us, we're back recruiting. So it's another position we're building into the organization because we believe it really matters that these stories get generated and get told in newsletters, and that we try multimedia to get the information out to people. We also talk about internal, external information sharing, and I think, again, it all ties in. I did reference in-house. We've really tried, we've just started information sharing meetings at a management level. So on a monthly basis, we're going to be calling information sharing meetings with a priority that managers get that information into the hands of the staff immediately. At the same time, we've got to figure out how to get that information into the hands of the community, the stakeholders, the family, the people we support, etc. But we're just building on it. And this priority area is going to keep us focused because we will periodically be responsible for reporting to the board and back to the membership on the progress we're making. Another item is media relations. And again, we've got a great partnership with ONTV, ONN TV, and we've had ample opportunities to get out there publicly and be on the media. I think our most recent was when the government announced that they were reducing the 3% increase from the previous government to the 1.5%. We went live on ONN TV and advocated, for what we felt was not a good decision by government when we're already talking about people who are below the poverty line. Why would they not get their 3% increase? But we use the media accordingly. What we've also come to recognize is that media wants the bad news, right? Because it sells. But this partner is really looking for what we do very well. So on TV is hosting us continuously. As I mentioned, on April 2nd, 3rd, Emily Kelly, a board member, and I will be on TV talking about the strategic plan. And we'll probably have a few more things that we'll throw in there when we get there. But it's really great to have the media relations. The partnership is also so strong that we've started to generate success stories with their involvement. So we have them coming in to generate some professional videos and documentaries of some experiences that people have had in terms of how their life and their dreams have been fulfilled. And then communication as a means of awareness. Again, we tend to find that as we're changing as an organization, we really haven't raised the awareness of those changes with all our stakeholders. So using communication as a means to raise awareness about the good work and the positive work that happens, as well as the challenges and some of the barriers that we continue to see within the community. So that's the communication priority. I'll take questions. Yes, Shirley. Sorry? It's internet based. It has a lot of followers, so a lot of people are watching on TV. And it just so happens that we've worked very closely with them, but we still have Sioux Today, we still have the Sioux Star, we still have to use those, and the district means of getting information out there. But the strongest partnership we have going right now is the internet-based television. I think it is ONN.TV, Leslie. You know that? Yes. Yeah, thank you for that feedback, Shirley. Sometimes it's hard to get feedback. I kind of go, oh my goodness, but it's a reality. So, we've got to get better at it. Before we came, I said to Leslie, this was posted throughout CLA. Yes, The live streaming was posted because, again, sometimes people can't make it out, but they can access it through a live stream, right? So how do we use technology? But internally, we do have to improve our communication. It shouldn't matter, like especially if you're calling reception area, they should know everything that's going on in the organization. Yes. Yes. So I'm right. So I'm gonna let Leslie talk to that. Can that mail out, Leslie? And thank you for raising it. Like, we have to find out who we have to reach out to, right? And so if we don't have, it depends on who we have identified connected to that person. That's what forms our mail out. So we have to make sure that if you're involved, then that you should be getting this information, the newsletter. So thank you for raising that as well. Leslie, what's the size of the mail out? The 1,400 items got, letters, invitations got mailed out, right? And we've come to recognize that membership is a real struggle. So we host it as a membership, but we open it to non-members, right? Because the only way we're going to draw people in is by not limiting membership, by just opening it. And hopefully, as people start to engage and participate, they will want to become members of the organization. Any other questions on communication? None? Okay. The next item of the puzzle is workforce excellence. I'm very proud that this has been identified as a priority area. The reason for that is it wasn't included in previous strategic plans, and yet it is a key piece of the success of the organization is the people we employ. And we've come to the realization that the connection between employees and quality of life is, if we don't improve the quality of life of our employees, it is pretty difficult to improve the quality of life of the people we support. Right now we have an employee shortage situation. We're recruiting like crazy. You may have seen in the paper the issues in recruitment, where the Davie Home Sioux College and the Sioux Employment Career Center are traveling to the Philippines to recruit people to register for the Personal Support Worker program at Sioux College, because there's a shortage of personal support workers in seniors healthcare. So we know we're not alone. It isn't because CLA is doing anything wrong. It's a provincial issue. We think it's also a national. It's been identified, at least within our sector, as a national issue. So we're really exploring how workforce and improving our workforce, the working conditions, engaging employees in decision making, how all that is going to positively impact our quality of life journey. One of the things we've done very recently, and it's the first item under workforce excellence, is we need to build hope and resilience in the organization. And we hired a gentleman who has facilitated hope and resiliency workshops for all our staff teams. So all the staff teams have participated. One of the things that came out of that work was that staff felt they needed to be connected more frequently. So over time, staff meetings started to decrease in our organization. As a result of the hope and resiliency work that was done, it became a priority issue identified by our employees. So now at a minimum, once a month, every staff team is hosting a staff meeting. And it's not just about talking about traditional agenda items, so what's working, what's not working, etc. We're looking at rituals. So building some fun and building some opening rituals and closing rituals to meeting, and really trying to focus on building more success within the meetings. One of the things that I'm been doing very recently is engaging with staff teams. So I've met with, 18 staff teams to date since the start of February, and participating in quality improvement training. And we're hearing about negativity within the organization, and we're discovering that negativity has been tolerated and it needs to be addressed. So it's going to be hard work, but that's what we get out of focusing on our employees and making sure they're engaged in the journey, because if they don't feel like they belong, it's pretty difficult for them to be committed to the mission, vision, and values of the organization. So we're very excited to see workforce excellence as a priority item. We're also dealing with the concept of organizational culture change. Now, I'm very reluctant to talk about culture change because it takes a long time to change the culture of an organization, particularly an organization that is so geographically dispersed and fairly large in size. But I think there is an ability to start chiseling away at what the organization culture has moved to and where we need to get it back to. Employees refer to it as, we want this to become a place that we're happy to come to, that we're full of pride because we do some amazing work, right? And we are doing amazing work. The employees aren't feeling it. So again, some work to do in this area, but we want to stay focused on seeing how we move the culture of the organization to where it needs to be versus where it is today. Because it is a barrier to progressing on quality of life. Recruitment and retention. This has to be a high priority. We are probably short 30 to 50 employees right now. Some of our employees are they start working at 7 o'clock, their shift ends at 3, they're not getting home till 11 because they're forced to stay because nobody's available for the 3 to 11 shift. Those are not good working conditions. So we need to really recruit with aggression, be aggressive in our recruitment strategies. The kinds of things we have a partnership with Sioux College. We had one round of it. What CLA does is with the college hosts an 8-week program. Community Living Algoma sends its employees to go teach the program, and we use it as a means of recruitment retention. But the college has some parameters, and one of the parameters is it has to be a second degree or a second diploma, so it has to be a second career. So what happens is, unless you're pursuing a second career, you're not going to take it. So we're going to have some discussions in-house. Maybe it's a program we bring in-house, because no longer are we finding developmental service workers. It's getting harder and harder to find social service workers. And so we've had to change our focus from a qualification to now really focusing on hiring based on people's values. And one thing we've learned by doing this is that if you hire people with the right values, they align with the values of the organization, we can teach a lot of the day-to-day work. With good training, good orientation, we can do that. So recruitment is a challenge, and we just have to get very aggressive with it. I'll give you an example. When a business like Lowe's closes their doors and 75 employees get a layoff notice, we should be hosting an event for those 75 employees and talking to them about what we do as an organization. And maybe amongst those 75, we might end up with 2 or 3, but we'll end up with 75 that are more aware of what Community Living Algoma does as well. So it would be money well spent for us to really stay on top of what's happening community to community. A recent example of a success story is we had no capacity to deliver supports to people with challenging behaviors in Elliott Lake, Blind River area. And so very recently, we posted 4 full-time jobs. Now, internal employees could have a full-time job, but it would mean they'd be working in East Algoma. And we were kind of thinking we might not get a lot of turnout. We ended up having 13 resumes, and I believe they were interviewing today in Blind River for 4 full-time positions and 2 relief positions. So we're trying to build some capacity. Thank you. There's an executive assistant who knows the conditions of her. Thank you, Andrew. I wish it was a drink. So the other item under workforce excellence is leadership development. We're very fortunate as an organization. We submitted a proposal about a year and a half ago for the implementation of a leadership development program in our organization. And the goal here is to really move away from a traditional manager-supervisor approach to the work to our managers becoming leaders and building relationships with employees and motivating, inspiring, coaching, and developing our workers. And so we were successful, and we partnered with 5 other community living organizations, and we received around $300,000 over 2 years. And we ended up hiring a company by the name of Nexus Human Capital, and the gentleman is a university-level professor in leadership development programs at Ryerson. And we're very proud of that, of having the opportunity to have most of our managers and coordinators participating in that work. It's a 2-year process, and we're really looking forward to some strong leadership development over the next couple of years. The other item under workforce excellence is accountability. I think our organization has done some amazing work. What we haven't been good at is when we say when something is supposed to get done, it doesn't get done on time. I have a success story. We don't have a video of it, but I use it in the accountability just to demonstrate the struggles with accountability at CLA. We need to really focus on it. There's a lady we support who for 7 years has been telling us she didn't want to live in the group home that she was living. It took us 7 years for us to finally listen to it. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. That's not committed to enriching quality of life. She has now moved out. She's in her own home. And if we were to do a quality of life measure, her life changed overnight. Her connection to her family improved overnight. And we learned a lot through this situation. But when a person says they have a goal or dream, we set a time frame. We have to deliver on those results. When we say we're going to do something with a 2-year strategic plan, we have to achieve what we set out as from an accountability perspective. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm really not, because having a 2-year strategic plan, and I'm not even done, I'm only on the 3rd item. So look at all the work that we have ahead of us over the next 2 years. But by building in accountability, I hope to be here 2 years from now to say most, if not all, of what we talked about has been done, and this is what we see as a result of that work. Any questions on workforce excellence? One of the things we struggled with was the term workforce excellence, and I'm hoping we find a better term over time, but it's really focused on the support workers. It's focused on the employees. Yes, Julia. Julian, it's very difficult to raise money. It would probably be even more difficult to raise money for jobs. Typically, when you raise money, you're looking for creating opportunities for people or buying a piece of equipment that they might need, a piece of adaptive equipment. But it's not common to fundraise to keep jobs. The jobs are funded by the government. Okay? Sherry? Yes. So we were the lead agency. So kind of the thinking originated in our organization. And then when I was putting assembling the proposal, I thought in order to convince the ministry that it's a worthwhile exercise, it'd be better to go with a group of organizations geographically dispersed. Because one of the things that happens traditionally in our sector is there's a leadership development program at Queens. But imagine what it would cost for us to send somebody away for a week. This program was built to demonstrate that there's effectiveness in training leadership groups together. There's nothing wrong with the Queens program. It's a great networking, it's a great learning. But typically what the research shows is when you go away to learn in a short period of time, you come back and you don't apply it, and it gets lost. What's nice about this program is you learn together as a management team, and you're assigned work. There's homework, and you have to apply it in your day-to-day work. So you're building your leadership capacity, enhancing your capacity as you're going. But what we did was we intentionally selected, we're a fairly large organization, and we picked another large organization to join us. And then we went to the far northwest, and then we picked an organization in Simcoe. So there's 6 community living organizations that are kind of setting the bar. And what we're hoping at the end of it, because there's an evaluation and research, we're going to collect data. We're hoping to demonstrate to the government that you can't set and fund a one-type model working for every organization. It would cost us a fortune to send 30 people away at separate times, hotel, meals, travel, etc., versus having 30 people trained on the ground in-house. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. One of the things, Shirley, I think I can validate is we were nervous when we were moving away from the qualification. I think the qualification, if it was available, would be great. But we have found that you can hire, there's some good people that we have hired in the last few years. I mean, we've always had good people. But to deal with the struggle we've had with recruitment, we've had to shift our focus away from the qualification to the values-based. And I can tell you some amazing success stories of people who had no background, knew nothing about developmental disabilities or this organization. They've come to a job fair, they heard a little bit about us at a job fair, and then they stay for the interview, or they don't stay for the interview, they think about it, and then they apply for the job. The challenge is when we hire them, what we're finding is there's more intensity in the orientation and training of those new hires, but the values are sound. And what we're starting to learn is it's easier to train and teach some of the day-to-day work than it is. You can't train and teach values. So we've seen some success, but it's a struggle. Our retention rate right now is 53%. So for every 2 people we hire, we lose 1. And we lose them because there are a lot of jobs and people will leave shift work for Monday to Friday work. And that's going to happen. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. But it's a 53% rate is alarming because I can't even describe how intense it is to get somebody hired, trained, and then you lose them. But on the flip side, we've also impacted the community because when there's a shortage at the Davey home, we've hired a lot of people that were working at the Davey home have come to work at CLA. It doesn't feel good, but that's the employment climate today is such. We're worried. I'd be worried about the next 10 years, what things are going to look like. We're starting to see more and more that this next generation of youth aren't really migrating to the human services work. It's not just in developmental services, it's in mental health, it's in children's work, it's in seniors care. So, I mean, CLA is on a fairly good path. It's pretty difficult. We host a job fair, 26 people come out, we might hire 5. It's a lot of work to go and do that stuff, but you can't stop. We can't stop. When I tell you the struggles of our employees and how we're not enhancing their quality of life, we're actually impacting it. Somebody who can't go home to their kids and they think they can leave at 3 and have to stay till 11. those aren't good working conditions. And that's going to have an impact on the people we support. It's going to have an impact on their quality of life. Does that help, Shirley? Donnie, you had a question? Yes, he teaches the leadership program at university level. Yes, he travels to the 6 organizations. Yes. We have him, so there's modules to the learning program. So he's not physically in our community for 2 years. He's delivered on the first half of the program, and in April we start the second half of the program. So it's the management level and coordinator. Yeah, specifically focused on leadership. The coordinator level is really, hopefully, a way for us to create some succession. Hopefully the coordinators and through leadership development, they become future leaders in the organization. And then we keep hiring at the coordinator level and taking people through the same process. Any other questions? Lucas is saying nobody in internet land, that's good. I mean, it's not good, but. Okay, the last piece of the puzzle is self-advocate leadership. Again, this is an area that has been developing over time within our organization, but we recognize the importance and significance of the voice of people receiving services is starting to have significant impact on government's attention. So, we really look forward to being successful here because a lot of things we do. So, for example, when we're out recruiting people with disabilities, the people who are impacted by who we hire should be at the table helping us hire. When we're doing something like this, nothing would give me more pride than to have a person with a disability who's leading some of this conversation. And these are things we have to work on. They're doable. We've seen it happen in other communities. But self-advocate leadership, we were at a conference very recently, a learning exchange conference in Toronto. And one of the presenters by the name of Vicky Kamak out of Vancouver, BC. Do you remember, Jen? You're not very happy, are you? So her name is Vicky Kamak, but she was presenting on what is happening in Canada in this self-advocate leadership movement. And she said there's a movement. It's called Disability is Cool. And it's moving at a pace that can't be stopped. And it's a very powerful movement. It's about people with disabilities starting to appear in movies and theaters on rights issues, human rights complaints, rulings impacting their lives. And she says she foresees the day where organizations got to be very careful about how they're delivering services because people themselves will decide whether the organization has a future or not. To me, that would be a dream come true, where people are actually driving the change and people are impacting the services that need to be provided. Now, it sounds far-fetched, but she said it is moving at such a pace that she said it's equivalent to what happened with the LGBTQ communities and how 5 years ago they weren't heard about, and right now they're widespread, accepted, included in community. That's how fast this movement is moving. And so it's very powerful to hear that. So when I look at having it as a priority in our organization, it definitely is getting us prepared for that empowerment of people who set goals and dreams, and if you don't help them achieve it, they move to the next door neighbor who's going to help them achieve it. What I like about it is that talk about accountability. Now, one of the ironies is having one service provider in a community means you're stuck. If you don't do it, you're not going to get that support. But this government is about privatization. So we're starting to see private not-for-profit providers surfacing in our communities. And so people will, I view it this way. It's like you get your newspaper ads, the grocery stores, and you have the money, you're going to decide which grocery store you're going to. And I think our organization needs to prepare for that. If we aren't going to provide customer service or can't deliver on it, if we're committed to quality of life and we don't deliver on it, technically we don't deserve to be in business. We don't deserve to be the service provider. So right now there's limited choices, and I think the more choices that people have, which I think the empowerment of self-advocates is going to create that type of environment, the more we will see the progress and the independence and the empowerment that people talk about. Things we've identified is self-advocates being involved in hiring and orientation. So right now at the job fairs, I'm going to go up there and I talk for 40 minutes about the organization. One of my goals is not to do that, and to have a person with a disability go talk to the prospective candidates about the organization. Same thing with the hiring. There should be people with disabilities at the table. So when we're recruiting, right now, it's typically a staff-driven exercise. So we got to get to the point. We used to have a self-advocate participate in interviews, and as I said, if it doesn't get embedded in the culture of the organization, it leaves. And so we need to bring that back. Another item is facilitating training. So if you want to know how to support a person with a disability, let the person with a disability facilitate the training on how you can support them, right? So, and again, given our person-centered and individualized approach to services, more and more we need people to really help us identify what training and skills their supporters need in order to support them effectively. Empowering others. So how do self-advocates have a voice so that they can travel and meet with people with disabilities and meet with family members and meet with the broader community to raise issues and empower other people to become confident and to raise their voice? Some of the provincial lobbying right now that is going on by People First Ontario and councils in various self-advocate councils in various communities, what I can assure you of is the previous government, the Liberal government, was not prepared to make any decisions without hearing the voice of the people receiving services. We haven't seen any evidence with this current government, and that's not a political campaign story, it's a fact. We haven't seen that yet, but I think it's going to be a matter of time before they're going to get confronted with the same outcomes. This government's going to be met with the heartache of having to deal with people with disabilities who are going to be screaming about them. And the issue that I see at the forefront for self-advocates is, why do they have to continue to live in poverty? I mean, just this evening I shared with the board on CBC News, there was an article where MPPs increased their housing allowance from $1,900 and some dollars to $2,300 a month, a 20% increase. You didn't see that advertised, you didn't see that out in the media. And so just to put things in perspective, people who experience disabilities get $489 a month for housing. Right? Self-advocates should scream. They should be at the government doorstep. Why are we any different? Why do you get $2,000 and I have to find an apartment at $489 or a place to live at $489 a month? Gross inequity, and it's taxpayer dollars. Plain language. Again, we struggle. I'm up here and I'm using some terms and I'm thinking, does self-advocates in the room even understand what I'm saying? It's just, we don't do it intentionally. We just have to get really good at it. What we have found is when we use plain language, everybody understands us better. It's not just people with disabilities. Plain language is so easy to understand. Sometimes the way we talk is like legal or medical jargon. And so we have to get better at everything we do being translated into plain language, so that particularly if we're going to work on engagement of that stakeholder group, the people we support, they have to understand what it is that we're presenting and talking about. Advocacy, again, as I mentioned, very powerful voice from an advocacy perspective, and people with disabilities get in front of government or politicians. We have a self-advocate leadership group of 3 individuals. So we have geographic representation, one from the east, one from the north, and one from Sault Ste. Marie. And they've already identified 3 to 5 priorities. Locally, they've identified the transportation and the current transit schedule as a concern. And we're helping them to prepare a presentation to city councilors and the mayor, because it's them that should be presenting their concerns. And so we support them, but it's those individuals that will be presenting on behalf of other people with disabilities. And then self-direction, very powerful. When people can self-direct their supports and when they set goals and who supports them, very powerful. We have across the organization right now, outside of our group living supports, people have a very strong voice to identify who's the right match, who can work with them and who can't. And it's also similar in community supports, where in support independent living, I think in outreach, case management, so that everywhere in the organization except for group living right now, if a person and if an employee and a person aren't the right match or don't get along, and a person has concerns or a family member has concerns, we do our best to realign that support. And it's not that it doesn't mean that that's a bad employee, it's just not the right fit. They might not have the same likes, interests of the person we're supporting. So we find ways to address that. But that's self-directed. That's the empowerment and the control that we want people to have over their lives. So that's the self-advocate leadership. And I'll field some questions on that particular area. Lucas, anything? Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. That's okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Jen, are you familiar with what you might be saying? I'm not aware that that's the plan. Okay. Is there anything you can comment?
No, I mean, I know that we want to do
And if I can add to that, there's definitely, when we made the decision to transition from sheltered workshop and traditional day programs, one of the resolutions at the board, at some point we have a decision to make about, is that the right building? Is that the right location? Right, so we're starting to look and think that there's still a need for a community center, a hub, but that we don't, that might not be the ideal location. I mean, at the end of the day, let's call a spade a spade. We're in an industrial setting, And so I remember one year bringing a former board chair of ours on a tour there, and he said to me, "Where would you put the picnic table? Because it's concrete jungle, it's asphalt, it's an industrial setting, right?" So the goal would be for us to find a community hub, community center where people can gather and people can do things. But the ultimate goal is you go there and you're migrating out into the community. Because people can still meet together in a community. You don't need to be at White Oak Drive to meet with your friends. That's a traditional way of thinking, right? So, but in terms of, you also mentioned that people would have to hire, or people, because is that possibly with the path? Right. That's what I'm thinking. That's it. So with, so with the passport funding, so families get the money, and then families get to go to whatever grocery store they want to buy their groceries. That's the way it works. It's that simple. The difficulty is that then you have to find your workers. CLA has plans to market and advertise for families to bring their passport money to us. The difficulty now, if we start advertising, we don't have the staff. Right? But it, yeah, Passport came to being because strong family advocate groups across the province said, we don't want to be connected to an organization. We want the money. We want to do our own thing. And we're good with that. We recognize that. But what we're recognizing is some of the challenges. If we're having a hard time finding workers, then I say to families, good luck trying to find workers. The families can, because it could be your neighbor, it could be somebody you trust. What we encourage families to do, make sure at a minimum you're asking for the vulnerable sector check, at a minimum, no matter who it is, right? But what we're recognizing as well, we have families coming to us that are really stressed about it, because you have to manage your own resources, you have to pay the person. Technically, you become an employer, okay? And we're recognizing that families come to us saying, geez, you know, we're with the private provider, but we're not really happy. Can we give you the money? Well, we're going to be a lot more expensive. So, you know, our going rate's probably going to be $35 an hour. The private provider is probably going to charge you $20 an hour, or I don't know what they charge by the day or whatever, but your son or daughter is only going to be participating in a group type setting of support. So they're going to be with 6 people, 8 people. We like to individualize some of our support. So going to your question about, is where we're moving to more expensive? So when you start individualizing support, what I can tell you is our transition, which we've been changing for at least the last 15 years, does not cost more money. Some people are currently over-supported, and some people are under-supported. When you start to individualize, what we find is it balances. And where people are independent, why have we made them dependent on paid support? People taking city transit, people who are volunteering, people who are working. Why do they need paid support? And so when you start going through the evolution of the change, what you find is it doesn't really cost more to enrich people's quality of life by individualizing their support. And Jen has been part of that transition of our sheltered workshop day programs for a long time. And I mean, that's exactly what we experienced. Some people needed a lot less support than they were getting, and some needed more. And they got it. We were able to get that addressed. Another thing we discovered was that people didn't know that they didn't have to come. It was like they were obligated to come. And when you kind of said to them, you don't need to come here anymore, they disappeared, right? So that's, I think, one of the outcomes of traditional program models is it doesn't meet people's needs. It typically meets organization needs. We're talking about something very different when we talk about our mission and our priorities as an organization is really like meeting people's goals and dreams, which is way different than what a program can offer you. But, I mean, it does balance out. The struggle on Passport is the recruitment of workers. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know, Heather, if you've seen the last quarterly report. There's a pile of money in Passport in the Algoma district that is not used. I can't find workers. It's unused, which is sad. These are resources. But here's what I'd like to say. If that money's unused and we're successful at recruiting, we're going to be advertising so that you can use that money. It could be used up. I mean, the government's giving this money and people aren't using it. It's unfortunate. Well, no, not accredited, but they go through intensive recruitment. They have to meet certain requirements. Then we have to be ministry compliant with safety, training, and there's a whole bunch of requirements. Yeah, but it's not like a licensed, accredited profession. But we are, through government expectations, through organization policies, there's criteria they have to meet, certain trainings they need. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great comment. Like, I remember the fear that we created. Today I listened to a stepmom being interviewed, and she used the word, I was terrified. But she goes, I'm so proud that he's had this opportunity. He's a different human being, right? But that kind of stuff, terrified, right? So this is when I go back to communication. We need to raise awareness. You'll see this evening, the raising awareness through storytelling, not me standing here talking to you, but people. You'll get to see what people are experiencing when they're connected with their community. And I think that's very powerful. That's how we alleviate fears. I was fortunate enough to travel the province to talk about the transition of a sheltered workshop. I brought 5 stories with me. That's all I talked about. Because I knew what the experience in the community was. The families just didn't understand what this change was. It was terrifying. Right? It was very terrifying. Shirley, I think you remember the meeting, the first meeting, where it lasted 4.5 hours, right? And then 2 months later, we came back together, and families started telling stories, and we didn't have to say a thing. because people experienced what the change was about through their family members. So I think we learn from that. We have to raise the awareness. We have to communicate. We have to get the stories out just to address the fears and anxieties. Quality of life is powerful. When you see it at work and your family member experiences a level of independence, their face is now up. They are now talking more. And it's amazing how people's lives can change when you focus on them and not on a group of people. Lucas, nothing coming through on internet yet? Any other questions on self-advocate leadership? Yes, Marcia.
Want to know if it's going to have you back together.
If we put the council back together?
Yeah.
So, Marcia, we've moved past the council, right? Because the council.
I'm not you get any about it all week.
Yeah. The council, what we saw with the council was that we weren't really empowering you as people to. Yeah, no. So, Marcia, the answer to that question is we have moved past thinking about the council that way, because it was more of a gathering, a social for people to come together, but we really weren't helping you to become the voice for other people.
And they was happy, you do your boy until now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They was happy, you didn't know. You were in it.
About the council? Well, Marcia, what I know was that they planned a final party. So you guys had a party. It was talked about that this council, the way it was, wasn't going to continue, but that CLA was still going to look at self-advocate leadership, but we were going to move it up a little higher. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Marcia, here's what's important. Your voice still matters. So the self-advocate leadership group that we're working with now, their job is to come out and listen to you and to hear what you have to say. And then think of the things that they have to address on your behalf. Yeah. Thank you for asking, Marcia. No, I didn't see it as a threat. I thought it was a good question. Thank you very much for asking it. Okay? Thank you. Am I going to the Greyhound game? Thursday? I think it's Saturday. Saturday night. No other questions on the self-advocate leadership group? Okay, so what happens now, the whole puzzle comes together. And the puzzle. For another slide. And so what you received on the way in was a card, type format. So that would be the front face. You will see on the back side of the card, and we really tried to make it very simple because you don't want people to get an information overload. So the back side is what I went through individual items. And then if you look in your packages, you're going to see 4 columns that are very hard to read. I'm getting old, so Leslie printed legal size really big just in case I had to reference it. But this information will be posted along with the strategic plan well, I better get behind the mic. This information will be posted along with the strategic plan, but as information for you to just go out there and read it. For us, it explains in more detail some of the things we talked about on each of one of those individual items, okay? So it's really trying to give people the information, but we were trying to make it card so that it's handy and not overload it so that people get really buried and lost in the strategic plan itself, okay? So that's the end of my presentation on the strategic plan. I'm going to call on Lila again because one of the things by presenting this, so the board is recommending to the membership that the strategic plan be approved, and that's a membership vote and a membership decision. So I'm going to call Lila back up to take the vote.
Yes. Okay, I have a motion here that says that the membership of Community Living Algoma approve a 2-year strategic plan as presented. I need a mover and a seconder. Jason? Mary Lynn? Any comments, discussions, questions? If not, all in favor? Thank you. Also, we have bylaws. On an annual basis, Community Living Algoma Board of Directors reviews the bylaws of the association. The bylaws established a guideline for how the association is structured and how the association is to operate. At this time, there is no proposed changes in the bylaws. We don't have a motion for that, and we just need a motion to adjourn. Okay? Oh, you want to, well, I'm ready to go home. He's got a video. Okay. We'll adjourn after. Okay.
So the last part before we adjourn is, again, one of the things that we've got to get better at as an organization is to end a lot of our presentations, a lot of our discussions with evidence of the work that's actually happening with people, real stories. So I believe this evening we're sharing a total of 5 very short video clips. Again, they're posted on our Facebook site, but we've got to find ways to get these out to families. So it's also on our website, or not yet. So they're also on CLA's website, not on CLA's website. They will be on CLA's website. So the first video we're going to watch, so is it just the first time? Is a gentleman by the name of Ben. And this is a video, Ben is currently, Leslie doesn't want me to speak anymore. So this is a video of Ben. He's a young man at Sioux College. Ben, you'll see through the video, has career aspirations. He's a student at Sioux College, but he's also employed at Sioux College in the maintenance department. Ben is truly a success in our community, a story of success in our community.
White Pines, 2016. I'm taking, let's say, my program is 2 or 3 years. Maybe go to university, or maybe just graduate and go and get a job. I am a maintenance student. I do a lot of repairs, cleaning. My boss is really nice. His name is Trevor Rising. It's really nice. He paid me good minimum wage. We do electrical rings, plumbing, and they show us how to do it. Rather than giving us a do it, and they show us what needs to be done because they've been there longer. People, they feel like they're doing stick with it. What motivates me is how I get happy and I'm excited when I'm to get ready to work. I'm sure I can see myself maybe working in a big environment company, maybe fixing, repairing, getting my own buildings, maybe all the windows.
The second video is a gentleman by the name of Charlie. Charlie, this is Charlie volunteering in the Buddhist community. He volunteers decades before the breakfast lunch program. And you see that it's more than volunteer, it's both relationship. You see all the people that Charlie connected on that school. It's about Charlie and this disability contributing to the practice. The next video is a gentleman by the name of Rocky. And Rocky was a gentleman that was supported in Jerusalem. He lived in also Jerusalem and the people that were living in the constant basis there. And so he would help to explore finding some place and talk to me about what's not familiar with people who live in the window. And that's what this story is about. He got to decide what he wanted to do. He was angry with a lot of people. I remember presenting an album from family. He was so quickly with the condominium that his daughter had found and made it medical. I don't know. Very hard. The condo had a pool, a sauna, pool room. You have to add in water and spray. I thought it was very powerful. So you'll see a Rocky and it's really easy.
Hi, my name is Steve McGuire. I'm a real estate broker with Grove Badge Real Estate, and I'm also the property manager for the company that I own called Regional Management Services. We're the building manager here at Pinecrest Village Condominium, and I provide real estate sales transactions for two other properties in the building. Well, this particular property owner is an interesting gentleman, and he was quite interested in providing service to the community for development. work in front of might be critical when finding fair for the building. There's actually two properties on site here, Michael Condominium, where Carpenter Condominium, which are both owned by a social recreation facility. The rec facility is a school, a spa, and an exercise area. Above that is a social room along with the billiards room in the area of the public for the schedule resident. There's also a social committee room, in the building. And they run various programs for the not so much. They have problems with other social tea clubs, coffee clubs, as they call it, special events. And those are available through the building, and I would encourage the residents to get involved, make contact with the city area. So they can think about all of this. When you warm up and you know, the sauna, the one trading pool, you get what you get, right? You get all the different things that you do here, yeah. 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 So the initiative with community-based housing option really came to fruition in the past year, I would say, and more intensely probably within the last 6 months. We were reluctant to get rooms because one of the struggles that we hear about in the community is the low vacancy rate and the availability of housing, community housing and apartments to just the general society. And so we weren't ready to really explore. We're more recently through the work of some of our managers. They've been able to create some, meet with some developers and really look at what options. And we were not really surprised, I guess, is the right word. We discovered that the community is very ready and has opened their doors. And so we had a few housing scenarios presented to us that now we're actively pursuing.
Yeah, next video is on Homeland Farming. Again, this one is an initiative we've been very proud of. 3 or 4 years ago, when we started, we realized that people should stay away from living in new houses. Our people is not working with education. And so we started applying for government grants with some students, government grants to improve. The key to the program is that the employer hires education for the disability, and we use some of the grant schemes to find jobs, those that need it. So we're really looking forward to this because people have been, some of the individuals that have been in the program for 3 years. We want to see what the uptake is on permanent funding. To date, I believe 3 of the students, 3 young students that have been hired on. So it's a very, very powerful video because it's the perspective of the student unemployed who are exploring the people and we're really identifying benefits of
We got 3 students employed in 3 different areas. We had 1 student who worked on a sanitary division and his job consisted of general maintenance of there. We had another student placed in our parks division. He was stationed in the Bellevue Park area. We looked at general things down there. That was an asset to us down there. And our 3rd student was our public works division. He was supposed to look after the litter pickup and tenants in our downtown core. After a few weeks doing that job, we moved into another area working with our crew that does homes and seed and general landscaping, and that worked out very well. We had 2 students in particular with mentors that worked in our park and fair services program. So we had another individual working directly with our grounds department. Operating program and new challenges at any time of day. And anything that is pressure on from the down. what we also do is we custom print SIM cards and a few other products. And what we do with our SIM cards is we custom print them for corporate use. And we actually roll them up and combine it and turn them into keychains. Yes, the benefits that all three provided was it allowed everybody to take on more work than we would normally undertake at this time of year. This is heavy vacation time for our employees, so we're always struggling to assemble crews that have enough people to carry out the work that we have, let alone do the little extra. The program added many benefits to our operations, specifically in player services, where they were involved with the settlement part, the payment part, the operations of the library, involved in the library. And then, looking at the golf carts, our carts have never been cleaner and more available to use in golf course than we've ever seen. And so those are just a couple of and then our grounds department, specifically Leland and Mike, solely responsible for having our keys in actually detectable state. The benefits were by having Mike on off the preparation of those keys. We have over 200 keys. Making their job easier by hiring two students doing that job is absolutely spectacular. When we first started out, we were a little bit slow, just like anybody starting a new job. But we went and wrote a little bit, and as long as we smiled, having fun and laughing, you didn't see it as work, you just see it as have fun.
The summer skill taught me a lot about commitment and dedication and how important it is to support your best effort. And I found this job very rewarding this year because it helped me learn about how important it is to create employment opportunities for my students and that everyone, no matter who you are, can set in a teaching student. When we first started the program, I was really shy, but as we got into it, we got to know each other better, and he's a really hard worker, and he ended up getting Employee of the Month.
We've never run as efficient and with as little manpower through the benefits and the efficiency. So this is not about charity, it's about executing our vision and thinking outside the box. We clearly did that this summer. It's also dramatic.
Video is a gentleman named Frank, and Frank really shows people living, working, playing, and volunteering in their community. Frank participating in cultural activities, and he's a story of transitioning and doing programs not being connected with community, developing and making relationships, and actually connected to the community.
living learning community.
You want me to share? Or do you want to
I,
take it next time?
I like to. I work with, over subdivision computers. And I also work with, my community worker, I work with her just about all of her life. I mean, she's been the first community of my, and then special Olympics committee, I got a gold and 3 silver in my license, but I retired. So next step for me, next week, I have, swim meet in February, the special Olympics, so I'm going to July. And, my mom is here. And my mom is my coach. And our head coach is not here tonight, but her name is Jean. And I would also like to say that Maisha is your friend, and she's been a very good friend. And then, and I just wanted to say because you know everything that you guys go with me and all right. I think you guys are doing a very good job and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So I'm going to call on Lila. Lila and her successor to adjourn the meeting.
Thank everyone for coming out and we're done with the very what I need now is in somebody to move a second and it's all in favor. Thank you very much. Take care.